हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, टुडे विल बी डिस्कस अबाउट एलेगरी। ओके, आज का हमारा टॉपिक क्या है? एलेगरी क्या होती है। सबसे पहले पढ़ेंगे एलेगरी। एलेगरी इज डिफाइंड एज ए स्टोरी और डिस्क्रिप्शन इन विच द कैरेक्टर्स रिप्रेजेंट आइडियाज सच एज पेशेंस, प्योरिटी एंड ट्रूथ एंड टाइप्स ऑफ पर्सनैलिटी। एलेगरी क्या डिफाइन करती है? स्टोरी के कैरेक्टर्स को, जो कि पेशेंस हो, प्योरिटी हो, ट्रूथ हो, ओके, और पर्सनैलिटी के टाइप्स को डिफाइन करती है। वी रिसोर्ट टू एलेगरी व्हेन वी डिस्क्राइब अ सब्जेक्ट अंडर द पर्सनैलिटी under the guise of some other subjects which has not apt and suggestive resemblances to the first one. Allegory is often described as an extended narrative, extended metaphor, or extended simile, since it carries a second meaning along with its literal meaning. Allegory is a major symbolic mode which has fallen into some critical disrepute in this century, though it flourishes in satire, underground literature and science fiction. Allegory came much more naturally to the Renaissance writers than it does to modern. Once the almost universal Renaissance view of universal in terms of various levels of correspondence encouraged the tendency to discover relationship in every directions and to express one things and term of another, thereby cultivating all forms of allegory. Okay, अब पढ़ेंगे मेन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स। मेन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या है? जनरली कैरेक्टर्स इन एन एलेगरी इज डू नॉट हैव इंडिविजुअल psychology. They are incarnations of abstract ideas and may bear such name as pride, meekness, etc. The term in typically cipher Spencer's Christian Invention, a proxy for the reader because the action is assumed to take place in the rather like Johnsian humorous, demonically possessed by fear. Desire or need and often represent jealousy, greed, modesty, etc. Allegory distinctive features is that it is a structural rather than textual symbolism. It is large scale exposition in which problems are conceptualized and analyzed into their constituent parts in order to be stated, if not solved. Next is simple and complex allegory. Allegory may be simple or complex. In simple allegory, the fiction is wholly subordinate to the abstract moral. An example is the fable, which is directed primarily at the set of ideas expressed its moral. Simple historical allegories occurs in some of the later prophecies of simple historical the Bible, such as allegory of the four kingdoms of Daniel. More complex historical and political allegories develop a strongly ironic tone resulting from the fact that the allegorist talks about the series of incidents when he is actually talking about another. Hence, there is a close connection between historical or political allegory and satire, a connection marked in Spencer's Mother Hubbard tale, which used a beast fable to satirize a contemporary political situation, in Dryden's Absalom and Achitophel, which used an Old Testament story for the same purpose. Next, a technique. Moral allegories are apt to be deeply serious in tone. In these allegories, fiction is supposed to provide entertainment and allegorical instruction. The basic technique of moral allegory is personification, Where character represents an abstract ideas, the simple the allegory, the more urgently the reader's attention is directed to the allegorical meaning. Hence, the simple or native moral allegory belongs primarily to educational literature. To the fables and moralities of the schoolroom, the parables and examples of the pulpit, the moral which illustrate familiar ideas in official building. Often the allegorist is interested in his additional meaning to care whether his fiction is consistent or not as a fiction. Even Spencer occasionally drops into native allegory. In the first book of the Fairy Queen, the Red Cross Knight is being taught by faith and hope argue him to take hold of her another anchor, the traditional emblem of hope. It is possible to think of hope as a female teacher wagging her anchor into classrooms. But it is simpler to think that literate narrative is being incessantly distorted by the allegorical interest. Okay, various forms of allegory. क्या क्या forms हैं इसकी? First है fable. Various literary forms may be regarded as special types of allegory in that they narrate one coherent set of circumstances which signify a second order of correlated meanings. A fable is a short story designed to inculcate a moral about some aspect of human behavior. Sometimes the moral or lesson is implicit in the fable, sometimes it is explicitly stated in brief form at the end. Most fables examples are those of Aesop and La Fontaine employ beasts and bright words to represent the deeds and motives of human beings. Animal Priest's Tale, the story of the cock and the fox's beast fable. The plot of Ben Jonson's Balpon is derived from the beast fable. The fox is almost always sly and malicious. Okay. Next have parable. Discussion of allegory inevitably involves some mention of parable. A parable is a short narrative presented so as to stress the implicit but detailed analogy between its component parts and a thesis or lesson that the narrator is trying to bring home to us. The parable was one of Christ's favorite devices as a teacher. Examples are the parables of the Good Samaritan, of the prodigal son, of the tree, etc. Here is a parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, on finding a pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had in bought in. Next, exemplum. An exemplum is story told to illustrate an moral point. The telling of example was a common practice of preachers in the Middle Ages, and from the sermon the form passed into literature. Unlike the parable, the exemplum was usually presumed to be true, and the moral is placed at the beginning rather than at the end. In Chaucer's is root of all evil. Incorporates as exemplum is the tale of the three revelers who set out to find death, but find a heap of gold instead, then kill one another in the attempt to gain sole possession of this treasure. In the first book of the Fairy Queen, the reader's knight is being taught by faith and hope argue him to take hold of her anchor, the traditional emblem of hope. It is possible to think of hope as a female teacher wagging her anchor into classrooms, but it is simpler to think that literate narrative is being insensibly distorted by the allegorical interest. Johnson explains the greed of such character as the lawyer Baltor, the miser Corvatio, and the merchant Corbino. Volpone pretends to the dead as the rapacious creature gathered round each aspect to on his death. On his wealth, like many of the foxes of the fable, Volpone is tricked in the end. In our times, in Animal Farms, George Orwell expanded the beast fable into a sustained satire on the political and social condition of our age. The typical plot is one which the innocent Gulliver, Alice, the Lady and Milton's Comus, the castle is put through a series of experiences which add up to the imaginative analysis of contemporary society. The relationship in every directions and to express one thing in term of another, thereby cultivating all forms of allegory. The almost universal residential view of the universe in the term of various levels of correspondence encourage the tendency to discover relationship in every directions. Thank you for watching.